Today we're replacing our alternator on our 2011 Honda Odyssey. This is applicable for 2011 through 2017 models. Before we jump in, I want to list the tools that were used for this job. You're going to need a variety of sockets, especially 10, 12, and 14 millimeters. Long breaker bar or long socket wrench. Also a flathead screwdriver to remove the different plastic components, as well as shop rags to minimize spills. Definitely highly recommend a Serpentine belt tool. What you see in the bottom middle, I have a link for one of those in the description. And also some type of cork or bottle stopping device to plug up the power steering hoses. And then last but not least, obviously an alternator. Highly recommend the Denso remanufactured alternator. See a lot on the internet forums about other brands and just not holding up and doing a very good job. In the video description you'll find a link to the unit at Rock Auto. Also wanted to go over the cost for the project. After the core refund, I'll be at about $145 in parts, which is about a $400 savings over the quote I received from the Honda dealership. Here's an overhead view of the area we'll be working in, including some of the trim pieces that need to be removed so you have access to the important parts. Next is a zoomed in view of the area we'll be working in, including the engine coolant reservoir and the power steering fluid that need to be relocated outside of the vehicle, so you have area in the orange circle to be able to raise and lower the alternator. Then also in the purple oval highlighted area you'll need to free up and loosen certain components so you'll be able to have some flexibility as you work with the belt and just in the general area. First things first, recommend taking the negative terminal off the battery. So you do this by removing two plastic clips, the front of the air intake, and then simply just remove off the negative terminal from the battery. Next we'll take off the engine cover and the front trim piece. Engine cover you simply just twist to the left with a screwdriver, flathead, and then the trim piece in the front you just kind of pry up underneath and lift the part that pops up. For the engine coolant reservoir, there's one black clip that you release just like all the others, and then it lifts up. You can see the bracket at the bottom of this video clip where it lifts up, and we will be removing that bracket as well. For the power steering reservoir, get a screwdriver and release the metal clip in the back. To provide an extra inch of space near the alternator, many people will remove these two brackets for the radiator. Coming back to the coolant reservoir, here are two clips where you need to remove the line to provide some flexibility to be able to take the reservoir outside of the engine bay. Here you see footage of me releasing these two clips. You don't 100% disconnect the reservoir from the vehicle. You just give yourself enough flexibility to pull it out of the vehicle and lay it on the headlight. Moving to the electrical components of the alternator, you have three items that need to be removed on the far left. It's really easily accessible that you just take off with a 10 millimeter. Then next, to the right of that, you have a black rubber cover over the top of another. Again, I believe this is also a 10 millimeter. You just have to kind of peel and pull it back, and in the process you have access to be able to open that. And then the last is this clip that you need to push in at the very top, kind of where those two little eyes are, and then pull the clip out and you're done. To provide some added flexibility as you work in this particular area, it's recommended to remove this screw right here holding in the air conditioning line. A lot of people also will loosen the screws in the AC condenser in front of the radiator. I did not do that in this job, didn't need to. Okay, to disconnect the power steering hose, I put a microfiber towel down there. Couldn't find any shop rags, but I've pushed the reservoir down as low as I can, and the idea is to take the top, or take this hose off, but leave it up at a higher elevation. It shouldn't drain out. And then I'm going to find something to plug the hole so the rest of the power steering fluid doesn't come out. So take the needle nose pliers. I ended up plugging both line ends with toilet paper, which worked out okay, but I would have preferred to have something like a bottle stopper or cork that could have fit in to plug it tightly. Next is the coolant bracket. this point we've cleared everything out of the orange circle area highlighted here and freed up and loosened items in the purple oval area. So now we're ready to take the belt off. Here's a diagram of how the Serpentine belt is routed. It's a good idea to get a look at this, but then also go look in your vehicle and confirm that it is in the route that it is right here, so when you have to slip everything back on that it's done the right way. With a 14mm socket, you take a breaker bar or serpentine tool and push forward slowly to release the tension in the belt to pull the belt off. To remove the alternator, you have two screws, A and C, that need to be removed. A, I believe, is a 14mm, C is a 12mm, but I also highly recommend moving the bracket, which is noted as letter D here, which will also require the removal of another screw, which is B. To remove the bottom 14mm bolt, recommend a ratcheting wrench that is long so you can get some nice leverage and power to remove the long bolt. To remove the two 12mm bolts, recommend a large socket wrench. Pretty straightforward to be able to remove the bracket and the last of the two bolts holding the alternator on. Now it's time to move the alternator out. At this point I just wiggled it until it kind of pulled off, and then I laid it on the flat area that you see here with the pulley up. Also got a couple zip ties and put them through the holes to help kind of pull and lift. But at this point it's pretty straightforward to just grab the black pulley part, position the alternator in the right kind of orientation and pull it through the spot. As you can see, it comes out relatively easy here. And now is a great time to put the old and the new side by side and take a look and just make sure that they are the same exact size, layout, everything matches up well. Okay, so back in the same way. So pulley at the top, and then once it's sitting down there, then you want to scoot it in. This is your bottom with the long bolt. This is your top with the top bolt, and then all the electrical connections over here. Here's a picture of where the long 14mm bolt will go through for the bottom of the alternator. Here's the alternator placed in the general vicinity. It needed to be tucked back and then tightened, what you see here. What was done to align the bolt and to make it all the way through each of the three components was putting a zip tie in the top bolt hole of the alternator, lifting up the alternator, pushing it back into the area, and then with the left hand putting the 14mm bolt through the hole until it went all the way through all three pieces. Okay, so getting the bolt back in. Once the bottom bolt is in, the whole unit will tilt, and now it's just a matter of lining up the bracket with get this, there's a bolt over here, get that one in first, get the bottom bolt in, and then swivel the alternator up until it lines up. On the back side of this is where the bolt screws into. So now it's aligned. Now we can tighten down all the bolts on the alternator and then put the belt back on. Up to this point of the job I haven't needed the tool, but at this point I highly recommend the Serpentine belt tool. As you can see, it's much thinner than the alternatives. It allows you to work within that really tight confines and to really be able to push the tensioner pulley back to give you the needed slack to be able to fit the belt back over the last accessory, which in my case was alternator. I found success starting at the power steering pulley by putting the belt over the top and putting tension with my right hand as I then routed it underneath the crankshaft pulley, again making sure it stays in alignment, and then bringing forward the AC, keeping tension on the belt with one hand. I then, in the area of the orange arrow, took with my other hand and looped it around the idler pulley, which is what the orange arrow is pointing at. Then at that point I got the Serpentine belt tool and pushed that forward, and in the process of pushing that forward it provided enough slack to then be able to route the belt over the remaining accessory, which was the alternator. In my particular case, I can't stress enough how helpful the Serpentine belt tool was. Just because it's so much thinner, you were able to push so much further and get a lot more slack on the line compared to a torque wrench or a breaker bar, which was much thicker and ultimately whacked and knocked into other parts of the vehicle. The thinness of the Serpentine belt tool really helped. Now that the belt is safely installed, all that is remaining to do is to put everything back together. This concludes our alternator installation. Would love to get any thoughts or tips in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this video, you may be interested in subscribing to our channel, DIY Around the Home, where we share videos on do-it-yourself fixes, appliance installation, car repairs, smart home technology, and just any other thing that happens around the home. Thanks.